Congress is considering forcing Apple to allow for alternative app stores within the App Store and open up competition because they're saying Apple has a monopoly.
No, I haven't seen this news. That's a big decision if we make it. I'm not sure where I stand.
Well, that's the purpose of the hot take. So the hot take is, should the U.S. government force Apple to allow for more competition within the App Store?
Welcome to the Deep Chat.
Opening it up to other app stores and maybe even potentially capping the fees.
Should they do it or should they have the power to do it?
Those are two questions that we can unpack, but first, should they do it?
That's tough. I was stuck on the second one.
Just okay, let's answer both. Answer both. Just your hot take. All
right, well, to, I guess, steelman it in a way, at one extreme, I think Apple's position would be, we have a well-groomed walled garden device and we protect our users and give them a concierge-level experience. The same way if you go to Disneyland, you can expect that customer service is top-notch. And if Disneyland says, no, you have to let these alternative vendors into your park and they're going to sell knockoff Disney merchandise, that's an obvious no. And the closer you can make that parallel, the stronger Apple's case is. Consumers do have choice. I'm on an Android, in part for reasons like this.
So that on Android you can load apps that might not necessarily make it onto the App Store or the Apple App Store?
Yeah, I have more control. Even if something's not in the Google Play App Store, I can get the APK file and load it onto my Android device. I can root my device. I paid for the hardware. Why shouldn't I be in full control of it? So that's just a personal choice, and that was one of the reasons I didn't get an iPhone, and instead I personally prefer Android. So I had a choice.
Right. Okay. So does that mean that in terms of should they do it, your answer is no, your hot take?
Well, I think, yeah, because there is an alternative, so why should the government be forcing competition when there's competition?
Now, the next question is, should they be allowed to? The government, is it a power that the government should be able to have? Because their argument is they're reducing a monopoly. Their argument is they're helping disrupt a monopoly, right?
Yeah, well, maybe that's the root of it. Is there truly a monopoly here? I do think there are monopolies in internet service providers and that Americans have really suffered as a result of the lack of competition in that space.
Okay, should the government have the ability to force Apple, or in this case, any company, to augment something like an app store, like a software-based solution?
All right, now I'm going strong no, actually, because go fix the bigger fish to fry. The ISPs really need their hands slapped much worse than Apple does, in my opinion.
All right, so my opinion here is, my hot take would be that no, they should not force Apple to do that. I'm a little bit more ambivalent on the whole monopoly side because we do have rules in place for that. I just don't know enough about it. What constitutes a monopoly? I'm not sure it applies in this. So my answer to that in general, in this case, should they have the power to do that, would be no as well. So that's my hot take. So let's unpack a little bit. Is Apple doing a disservice to everyone by not allowing them to load whatever apps they want or competing app stores to be on the Apple ecosystem? Now, the way that I look at it straight out the gate is that sounds like a nightmare to me. The reason I like Apple is because when I download an app, I can rely on it better. They do a great job of keeping that walled garden clean, and I can trust that the apps do what they're supposed to do and that there's much less security holes. Do we sometimes get some things later? Yes, but the quality is usually pretty high. There are some bad apps, but in general, they do a really good job of keeping out the garbage. And I don't want to be confused as to where I'm getting an app. If they did do something like this, I would love to see a way to just totally opt out of any secondary app stores. I do not want to touch a secondary app store. And then the second part of it to me comes to the market fairness, and you already alluded to that there are alternatives in the market. And if you want to, you can go to those alternatives. If there's a consumer demand for something that is different or better, the consumers will go and they will choose it. Other companies with a lot of power, Amazon, Google, can come up with. It is not an Apple-only thing. You could go out and start an app store, obviously, if you're a larger company. If you're a smaller company, you could too. But, look at the emergence of the sort of app stores on the gaming platforms. What is that one app store that everybody uses?
Steam?
Steam, I believe, yeah. The technology exists now for someone like Amazon to come in and disrupt. And Amazon might even have an app store. I don't know.
I think it's, oh boy, they did this whole Kindle thing and it had like their own like version of Apple closed source. I don't know. I haven't heard about that in a long time ago. I don't know if that's even still going.
I just think that it sets a bad precedent. It just sets a bad precedent if we're saying we're going to punish you for being successful with your app store. And I guess the argument for a lot of people is that Apple takes too much of a cut as well from their apps and that they're too restrictive with their apps.
Well, therein lies, I think, the core of the controversy. So Apple takes 30% of purchases made in-app or purchases at the time. So let's say you and I create an app and we sell it for $10. Apple's keeping $3. Now, on top of that, if we have in-app purchases, like let's say these episodes were for sale and people had to pay $1 each every time they click the buy button, Apple's getting 30% of that as well. And that is really where the controversy came in. And in fact, if you look at other people like Netflix, Netflix has chosen not to pay that. They want so consumers have to kind of jump through hoops, sign up online, and then install the app. Now, naturally, you don't buy anything except for the subscription on the app, so they don't have that sort of checkout problem I was describing. But yeah, any app purchases, Apple in perpetuity is taking 30% and blocks you from introducing your own payment mechanism.
Yeah, so that's an interesting part. I think that when it was originally conceived, the App Store made sense, that 30%, right? And I think for purchasing the app, that fee still makes sense. Apple is the infrastructure to allow it, and that whatever the number is, a number makes sense. But when you start to go to things like Netflix, which back then there was no subscription on apps when they first started, right? In the first few years, at least. So I could see a world in which Apple would have to reconsider the subscription, 30% of every month subscription, right? Where they might say, okay, for subscription services, we get 5% for any kind of subscription in perpetuity, or we get 30% of the first 2 months or something like that. I would think, and I would encourage Apple to reconsider that. Simply because it seems a little bit onerous that you've already paid your fees to the App Store, right? And now you're just going to pay forever. Why jump through those hoops and lose? I mean, 30% is a lot.
Yes. Every
single month for years. I mean, imagine how much that amounts to for Netflix. It's billions.
Yeah, of course.
So I can understand that objection, but at the same time, people found ways to avoid it. Like Netflix, you can't sign it up for it without going to their website first, which, okay, so what? It's not a big hoop to jump through. So they figured it out.
Well, then let's talk about, was it Fortnite that really went to battle with Apple?
I don't know a lot about it. Do you?
Enough. So Fortnite, hugely popular game. They put in their own payment system. The same way, you can go to a website and it can have a custom payment system, or it can have Authorize.net or Stripe or whatever. And then Apple said, that is against our rules. We don't think you belong in the walled garden because you have an alternative payment path.
Right. And you think that alternative payment path, they don't like that alternative payment path because they can't track it and extract money from it, revenue from it, right? Presumably that's the reason.
Let's just draw precedence. Apple's basically giving you an operating system. And one of the things an operating system does is help you install new software. Windows is an operating system. Imagine if Windows wanted 30% of every purchase you made in a Chrome browser installed on a Windows machine.
Oh, I'd have to unpack that analogy a little bit, but it seems solid at first. I think the argument for them might be that consumers will get screwed in the end by someone. And
Which might as well be us.
well, there's that. Yeah. But what I mean is, payment is a very difficult thing. I mean, there's a lot of rules and restrictions around payment. There's
Sure.
and in doing it well is extremely important. For instance, Stripe did it well, made it easy, but also complied with all the federal regulations around
Right.
payment systems, right? It's not easy. And I think Apple's argument there would be, well, they're likely to implement it wrong. Now, maybe Fortnite doesn't, but if they allow Fortnite to do it, then they have to allow other companies to do it. Now, once you allow other companies to do it, somebody's going to get harmed, and the consumer's going to get harmed. Apple has protected their brand, and you know that when you download something and you pay for something on the App Store, it's legit. It's not broken. You're not going to get screwed over. But if they allow one person in, unfortunately, yeah, Fortnite probably did it right. They have tons of money to do it right. But allow them in, and then what? You allow just this random app to have its own payment system, and it bilks people out of money, and then Apple's reputation suffers. Because I think, look, Apple has enough
Right.
money. I don't think they're saying, oh my gosh, it has to be about every penny. I don't think it's that at all.
Well, but
a little
that's
bit.
their right.
I shouldn't say at
It
all.
doesn't matter how much money you have. You have a right to earn more.
You have a right to earn more, but what I'm saying is I don't think that is the only reason that, oh, we got to get our hands on more money. I think they legitimately do want to protect their brand and the consumer.
They should get you on the stand, man. That sounds good to me.
Well, I mean, they have evidence of it historically of trying to protect the consumers.
There has not been a diaspora of people leaving iPhones.
No, that, and also, they have a history with fighting for strong encryption, for removing UUIDs, universal identifiers. They're the only company really trying to do that, to protect the rights of the people who use their devices that I know of. I mean, only major company making phones.
Okay,
I should
amongst
say.
big companies could be.
Yeah. Right. There's plenty of other companies that actually fight for the rights of the consumer. But in terms of the big handset makers and such, their primary source of revenue is not selling your data, which is appreciated. Whereas Google, and Tim Cook has pointed this out, that their primary source of revenue is ads and selling your data effectively, because ads come from selling your data. While there's nothing wrong with that, the incentives built into those two systems are completely different. Apple can say and try to protect the consumer, and there's evidence that they continue to do that. And so what I'm saying with the Fortnite case is that it presents a conundrum, because while the Fortnite makers are probably the type of company that can do it accurately and well, it opens up Pandora's box for Apple to allow others on. So they have to fight it.
Yeah, they need to maintain that position.
And for me, I appreciate that. Because right now, brand-wise, I trust the security and authenticity of things on the App Store. Now, Kyle, you're smart enough on your Android to make sure that you audit and vet and make sure that you're not downloading things that might be nefarious or bad for your operating system, or malware or buggy apps. Mm-hmm. You're someone who can do that, but most people can't. And if you're on an Android system, all the people that I know that are on Android are on it for very specific reasons. One is, we want to be on Android so that we have more flexibility. And everybody I know that's on an Android, or not everybody, but most of them are technical. Some people are on an Android because they couldn't find another phone. I know one person that likes a BlackBerry style keyboard, and BlackBerry still makes phones. I think they're on the Android operating system now. So she's on Android.
Sure.
And she typed a book with her, most of a book with her fingers.
Nice.
Quite literally on a BlackBerry mobile.
Cool.
So there's different reasons for being on Android, but
Yeah.
I think the general populace is probably safer or better served on Apple personally. So I'm kind of an Apple fanboy in that respect. I get the alternatives and I appreciate the alternatives, but I like the simplicity and the reliability and the security on Apple.
Well, just to footnote this, if you take a global stance, I think the reason most people are on Android is probably cost. The affordable devices are almost always Android, et cetera, et cetera.
That's true, and that may very well be true. And I know Apple's coming out with lower cost products that have spread them out a little bit more. They take older versions of their phones and sell them much cheaper. Looping back on this idea that should Apple allow that type of side loading or allow alternative app stores, I'm still a firm no when I think about it, and I support their fighting Fortnite in that. I mean, they could have a workaround for that, just like Netflix has a workaround for it. Netflix, you go to their website. Fortnite, go to their website. It'll show up in your game. It's just a little inconvenient. Sorry.
No way, dude. Listen, if you have to take an extra step, you lose 90% of your consumers.
You think?
Yeah.
Well,
I was talking to a VC guy earlier this week, and he's like, we can't even, he was turning down, talking about another investment he turned down, and it was because they needed people to install some custom software. He's like, we have failed in countless investments just trying to get people to install a Chrome plugin. How are we going to get them to install a whole app?
Yeah, I guess there's this might color my understanding. So I guess Fortnite could say, look, we're missing out on a massive amount of revenue. There's only two major app stores. You have the bulk of the customers. That we're trying to access. This is unfair. I have no choice.
Yeah, we're basically a casino, and you're telling people to walk 10 miles to get their chips.
Right, and there's no choice, right? There's no other place to get the chips. So there's only really two choices. There's Android or Apple. And Apple consumes, I think, a larger portion.
Well, no, Apple's smaller in the grand scheme of things, but of affluent people, it's disproportionately high. Of people who spend money on digital goods and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that the dollar amount that people who own iPhones spend is much higher. So, they're missing out on a large market. Oof, that's a tough one. I can understand that dilemma and that problem. Oh, that's a tough
here's
one.
my core concern. We're about to let the government tell this private company, not because they have a monopoly, because they don't, there's competition, but because this is weird behavior, unprecedented when you look at other operating systems, true, but they created this system, and now you're saying, hey, that 30%, you're going to have to change that or eliminate it. Apple could say, we're not able to operate our business without that.
Oh, true. And we know that's not true. Right?
Well, it's not our fault they're inefficient. They could argue that.
My point is that, could Apple run it if they cut it to zero? Yeah, they could still run it. They have so many sources of revenue. They're doing well. But should they be forced to? I still think the answer is no. But I am sympathetic to that plight of the companies who want to do more on the app system and don't want to share that 30% revenue. See, this is what I come back to is Apple needs to rethink the pay scale. Maybe when you buy an app or purchase an app, it's a certain percentage. But when you buy in-game things, it's a smaller percentage. Or subscriptions, it's a smaller percentage. I think that's what will come of this.
That did happen. There's something for app manufacturers with less than $1 million in revenue annually. There's I think it's 15% now, some sort of discount like that.
Well, but I'm talking about in-app purchases having a different scale as well, because it's amazing. Like remember what's that game that was very addictive? Everybody played it for some time.
Angry Birds?
No, well, that was another one. Later than that. It was like the gems and things you click on.
Bejeweled or Candy Crush.
Candy Crush. They were printing money.
Yeah.
For a long time. And that was within the App Store in-app purchases.
Yeah.
They did just fine. I mean, they were printing money. It was so much money. It was unbelievable how much that app made.
And they paid the Vic.
They paid it, and they did just fine. So it's not that it's impossible to do just fine. It seems to me that Fortnite just doesn't want to give up that dollar amount. And I guess the argument would be, well, maybe Fortnite says, well, we can't, and that was your inefficient argument, right? Maybe Fortnite can't afford to keep its business open if they give that much to Apple in their in-game purchases. I don't believe that, but your point was, well, maybe they're just running an inefficient company because, as I brought up, there are companies that have succeeded paying that 30%.
Yeah, true.
So,
But I don't think that's the measure that other companies were able to do it.
well, but what is the measure? What is the complaint that I mean, really, the complaint comes down to
Anti-competitive.
it's anti-competitive because you're the only place to go and we have to pay that fee, right?
Yep.
So I guess the argument would be or the analogy would be, there's a gas station down the street and it's the only one in 500 miles and they charge 30% more than everybody else. I mean, doesn't that already happen?
Sure, yeah, in a sense.
But 30% more than everybody else, not they charge 10 times more or an unaffordable amount, right? There's a difference between an unaffordable amount and 10 times and 30% more, right? If you took the national gas average and that company, which is the only one in 500 miles, charged 30% more, do you think that would be unfair?
Probably not.
Right. If they charged 100% more, would it be unfair?
I'm still going to say probably not. So the one caveat here is, where is this? If this is in like a major city, let them charge whatever they want. I'll drive 2 blocks and get it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. 500 miles. There's no other gas station within 300 miles, the average range of a car.
So at that point, there is a national interest question here, because without that one station, that roadway is basically broken and useless. So I think under those circumstances, I'd like to see some government oversight. I don't know what it is, but maybe they even need to supplement that company because of critical infrastructure concerns. But
okay, but let's do this. If they charge the same amount, that's fair, right? As everybody else. The national average.
Oh, of course, yeah. How could you argue?
No other gas station within 300 miles charging the national average is fair. If they charged 500% more, is that fair?
Well, it comes down to that crux. Like, is this... do I have an alternative? Do I have an alternative?
You don't have an alternative in 300 miles. You're not going to make it to another gas station.
Why am I going this way? I knew this in advance.
Well, that's another good question, right? Why am I going this way? But what if you didn't know it in advance, right? But Fortnite knew it in advance.
They did. They sure
right?
did.
They know they're getting on the App Store. They know the fees on the App Store. Okay? So scratch that. You're there. You got stuck there. And then you realize how much the fees are.
Well, that's not the fees. And I think they went in with a battle plan. This wasn't a mystery to Fortnite, but I get your point. Let's do it this way. Let's say you get there and that gas station is consistently charged 15% above national average, and the day you arrive, it's 500.
Okay, but that didn't happen with Fortnite either. But go ahead.
Right, but closer to more realistic, because like there's gas shortages and stuff like that. I think there is a gouge somewhere at the floor of a disaster. The government has to step in and make sure supply chains are good and people are fed and this kind of stuff.
And there's no price gouging, yeah.
And it's a sticky subject. What is price gouging and where do you charge it? Like, okay, for example, I'm giving out, just putting this on the record for everybody, trumpet lessons, but it's $10,000 an hour if you want to come get a trumpet lesson from me. Government shouldn't be able to stop me from doing that because people don't need trumpet lessons.
Right. So the argument here and the analogy here is that people, if you want to start a business dealing in software, you need the App Store. Okay, so we kind of agree there, right? That the App Store...
The App Store is one of many paths to a large market of consumers.
Okay, so you almost need it, don't quite need it. But I go back to this, is a 500% markup on that gas station 300 miles from nowhere, is that fair? I think that is close to price gouging at that number. But at 30%, it's completely fair.
Yeah.
Right? You'd be happy. You'd be like, oh, great, 30%, no problem. I don't have a problem paying with that. This is the middle of nowhere. They got the gas here.
Yeah.
30% seems reasonable. 100% seems reasonable still.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you go to the Big Sur. You ever seen the gas prices up there? Jesus.
And that's accessible. We're not even talking about some remote Alcan highway kind of thing.
Right. So I'm just exploring this with this analogy.
Yeah.
30% does not seem unreal. And Fortnite knew going in. And it's not like they ended up there and realized, oh my gosh, we're going to have to pay that. No, they knew going in that this should be built into their cost models.
Yeah, this was Normandy for them. They went in, they had their whole alternative payment thing ready to go, and they said they were going to duke it out.
Right. So that what they're choosing to do is fight a battle to
Poke the bear.
access more of their revenue. They're just not happy paying the fee, and they're trying to make it so they don't have to, and they have the money to fight the bear. And I applaud them for sticking up for themselves and all, but I think they're wrong. I still think thinking about this more, I think that they're just whining. Unfortunately, that they looking at the numbers and they're going, well, that's 30%. 30%'s a lot. Look at how much better our books would be.
Well, and it's 30% for what exactly?
Well, we're talking in-app purchases. I already said that I would, one-time purchases, but 30% for repeated monthly subscriptions. I think Apple needs to rethink that. In all fairness, I think that they do. But I don't really have a quantitative reason why. I just could see that Apple's doing so little in return for that. They're allowing you to download the app, and that's about it. There's no interaction. You download the app, you pay a subscription, and they're done. The data doesn't even move through their system, so it's not like they're paying for the data to be streamed to the app. So there's no cost to them moving forward. They should make their revenue and just let it be. But the in-app purchases are different in my opinion, because those are the platform does enable those on a frequent basis. The simplicity of doing so on the App Store is one of the reasons why people purchase, like Candy Crush worked, because it was so damn easy. Yes, I want more of those, whatever. I forgot what it was. I played it a few times, but I'm not a big, handheld gamer.
Uh-huh.
But I definitely think the simplicity there, you're paying for it. You're paying 30% for it, or whatever that number ends up being. So I'm just on the side of, no, we shouldn't force them to.
Yeah.
And it's just a cost model. It's the model that you have to build, and every company should build when they're doing their homework on their finances and whether or not they can close the business case.
No, I think there's room for laws to be passed in this realm, but I don't think this is the battlefield for it. It's just too weak of a case to me.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious to see in the future if the government gets even more involved, but we'll see.
Yeah. Go sort out the ISPs first if you're listening, government.
That's true. And we could do a follow-up with someone who thinks otherwise. And
that would be great.
I could see myself changing my opinion if presented with the right info, but right now, no.
Yeah, I think ultimately this has to come down to almost a lawyer telling you things you didn't expect about precedent. And look, if you change this, here's 3 other things that'll happen that sound bad. Because there's just too many, like you kept saying, you think Apple should reconsider the subscription fee. And that sounds very intuitive and natural to me. But I doubt if Apple, with all of its employees, you were the first person to have this idea.
Right.
Surely they've thought this through, and surely it must not work in their favor for facts we don't know.
I would like to hear the other side. Forget about the lawyerly side of things, but the business case side is, how is this harming my business from succeeding? Because we've talked about, we don't think Fortnite is being prevented from succeeding. They knew it going in, but I'd like to hear someone say, from a business perspective, this is why I'm prevented from my business succeeding, because Apple has a monopoly and takes 30% of everything. I'd like to hear that person out. I'd like to understand why they think that is true, because we do cost modeling. We know how much it costs to run an antenna in every country in the world practically, and for satellite communications, and we have to factor in every little detail. And it's a lot easier to factor in that 30% because it's 30%. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty easy, pretty easy math.
Yes, and the math didn't change here. That would be a totally different case.
Right. Yep. If and this is a wrinkle, if Fortnite was in the store and then Apple said, you know what, we're going to boost our fees from 10% to 50%.
Yeah.
Different story.
Yeah. Or for games starting with the letter F.
Right. Arbitrary, whatever it is. Yeah. Different story. But the level playing field is there, and it's always been known. I don't believe they've changed that in forever.
Right. Business is risk. That's what it is.